In November of 2014, Ubisoft released the next installment of the Assassin's Creed franchise to lukewarm reviews. At the time of release, Unity was regarded as one of the buggiest and unoptimized PC releases of all time, in a year with notable other disastrous ports like Watch Dogs and Dead Rising 3. While Unity may be unseated from the throne of the worst PC port of all time by last year's Arkham Knight, the graphical glitches and rage felt by PC gamers at launch is still not forgotten. But how's the gameplay now? After all the patches are done and all the driver tweaks are finished, does Unity run any better on the PC? The short answer is kinda. Unity's still a bad port and those problems are still evident. While the game runs better now than it did at launch, it's still not possible this late in the game to go back and fix the foundation. Everything they've done since has just been band-aid fixes. For me, with an i5 4790K overclocked to 4 GHz and a 290X, the game was playable. And when I'm not recording, it was playable at 1080p 60 FPS with a few drops here and there. But still, it's not up to the standards one would expect from a AAA release from a yearly franchise. You've probably noticed in the top left corner of the video there's an MSI Afterburner in-game overlay running, showing in-game performance data. The first thing you should have noticed is the game's currently running at 30 FPS. The game has no frame rate lock, however, but when running at 60 FPS, all 4 of the CPU cores hover around 80 to 100%, especially taxing in crowded areas because often in this game there's 100 plus NPCs on the screen at any given time. Having this high CPU usage meant that it was near impossible for me to record with any level of quality with this setup. Even at 30 FPS, you're probably noticing hiccups in the recording. The game when it ran didn't look like this, but no other game has had this much stuttering problems while recording as Unity has. I usually record at 60 FPS. High CPU usage is a classic sign that a PC port's not well optimized. Both the current consoles use APUs, meaning that the CPU and the graphics accelerator is all in one chip. That's a simple way of explaining it, but it gets the point across from now. Because of this, when making a current-gen console game, all you need to worry about is the workload on the APU. A gaming PC usually has a dedicated graphics card, however, that can handle a lot more of the workload. However, you'll notice that almost this whole time, the GPU has been taxed at 100%. That's not uncommon for most modern PC games because you're trying to get every ounce of performance you can out of the card, and because the monitoring software for how much load a graphics card is under really isn't perfect. However, in Rainbow Six Siege, another game I've been playing a lot lately, I run a game at 144 FPS to get up to 100% usage. While this may say 100% usage, it's more important to look at the temperatures. When my card's at 100%, I know that it usually will hit about 80 degrees Celsius most of the time. It's not happening here. Most likely the GPU is not being as fully utilized as it could, and the game's not separating out the workload between the CPU and the GPU as well as it should be. The game does still have a few graphical flickering issues, yet nowhere near to as bad as what it was on launch on both PC and consoles. I didn't have anyone's face disappear on me. The game at 1440p to me looked gorgeous, but the frame rate drops down in the 20s made it unplayable for me at that resolution. Even lowering the graphical settings didn't seem to help. The game still has some issues on AMD hardware as well, mainly with tessellation. But here's a hint for you AMD users. If you go into your AMD drivers and create a custom profile for this game, override the game's tessellation settings and force the program to use 16x or 8x, that does seem to help a bit with the CPU overhead. With 16x, there was no visible loss of quality for me, and with 8x, the only notice I had was some of the characters' hair. Overall, the game is playable if you're willing to have patience with it, but people's experiences with different hardware seems to be all over the board. If Unity is working or is not working for you, please let me know in the comments and post your specs. Maybe you'll help someone else who's trying to decide to gamble their money on this game or not. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe, and remember, keep on gaming.